Yep.
Okay, I think I fixed it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Success. Okay.
All right, I'm just gonna start 5:30.
Okay. Good evening. Oops.
Here we go.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
Now, that's familiar. Good evening. My name is Tanya Morrow. I'm the chair of the RVTD board, and we are convening our January 2026 regular meeting of the board. And we'll start with a roll call, please.
Denise Kraus, Bill Mansfield,
Here.
Tanya Morrow,
Here.
Tyler Jasper,
Here.
Katrina Ernman Newton,
Here?
Dan Davis, and Carl McNair.
Here.
There's a quorum.
Thank you. First item of business as usual is approval of the minutes. As you all probably know, I did propose as at the last meeting, I suggested I was going to propose some changes to the November minutes. And then I also wanted to add, after reviewing the December minutes, some additional things on that one. The December minutes, I have edited and suggested some additional changes without actually listening to the recording. The November changes I've made were actually based on the actual recording itself, and I included the counter numbers there. But is there anyone that objects to those additions or changes or has some comments about them? Hey, Dan.
Excuse me.
Okay, so we'll deem the minutes as amended, approved.
I'm okay with.
You're okay? Okay, good. All right. Everybody received the financial reports? Anybody that didn't? Okay. The record will reflect all the board members received the financial reports for December 2025. Public hearing. There's Denise. Hi, Denise. We have an item on the agenda tonight that is subject to public hearing rules. And so we're going to start out by, I'm going to open up the public hearing. Well, we can just have you get, are you going to present on this? Yeah. We can open up the public hearing and have you present. So I'm opening up the public hearing. My guess is we don't have anybody in attendance or online to participate in that. We have one? Okay, great. Okay. I'm opening it up. We'll go ahead with the staff presentation.
So Matt, oh, there we go. Okay. It worked.
You might pull your microphone a little
okay.
closer, Kelly.
Is that better?
Better.
Okay. Good evening, Chair Morrow, board members. My name is Kelly Matting. I'm the operations manager here at RVTD. And tonight you have a public hearing on the special levy ballot title. And I'm just going to kind of go through, because I thought if you were watching this or you were a member of the public and maybe didn't know exactly what this was, this is going to kind of explain it, even though you probably already know because we talked about this at our last board meeting. So again, here's the timeline. So we have our meeting tonight, and the objective of the meeting tonight is that the outcome would be that you would approve a ballot title and a levy increment. We'll have another board meeting on the 25th of February where you'll look at the explanatory statement. We'll talk a little bit about that here tonight as well. The document that you will approve tonight will be submitted to the clerk's office on February 27th. And then that explanatory statement needs to go to the clerk's office on March 19th. You have a board meeting on March 18th. Hopefully we're going to be able to get the explanatory statement. You'll be able to approve that in February because that's a super short timeline between one day and the next day to get that done. So we don't want to put you in that situation. And then educational outreach, of course, then the meeting will occur on, or the election will occur on May 19th. So at the last board meeting, you all asked us to talk to our council about specificity and adherence to any ballot information that you might put forward. So the title, the explanatory statement, and the summary. Today, we're just going to look at the title, the question, and the summary. But you asked, if we put some specific language, are we going to be held to it if something happens to some other funding for us, for example? And what the attorney came back with is this statute, which basically says, if you say you're going to spend money for a specific purpose and you do not, then you can be held civilly liable for the return of that money to the taxpayers. And so what she recommended was to keep the description broad and don't include necessarily specific promises. And that may seem strange because you would think, well, why not? And that is because RVTD's service is funded by a variety of different funding types. So for example, we may get the levy, but federal funding could be reduced. And if that were the case, and we said we were going to do this service with the levy, and that wasn't a priority for you or the community, we would still have to do that if we said we were going to do it. So one of the things that you had said at that meeting was, well, if this is the case, then we want to have the language be more broad. And that's the language we're bringing forward to you tonight. So again, the caption, and it's very specific. We have a certain number of words that we can use for the caption, the question, and the summary. Again, ideally this is be adopted tonight, and we'll talk about the explanatory statement later. We used the language in the caption that was used in 2021. So renewal of a 5-year local option tax for general operations. The question, we have 20 words, and we used the same words that we used in 2021. Shall the district, well, this was, shall we continue imposing 13 cents per thousand? Again, by your adopting this, you are setting a levy amount. That value for 5 years beginning July 1st, 2026 to fund general operations. And then that's the 20 words. But we also have to put in this measure renews current local option taxes. That's required by law. And because it's required by law, we don't have to include it in the 20 words, which was kind of nice of them. And then the ballot title summary, which you all have. I can read it if you want, but it basically talks about RVTD, talks about the services that we're providing currently to the cities that we're providing in our district, talks about when we're providing them, Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. And that currently, and if this measure is adopted, that the levy amount would be 13 cents per thousand. And when it will expire, which it will start in 2026 and it'll expire June 30. That's not right. Oh, that's right, because the current tax levy will expire June 30, 2026. That is right. And it talks about the purpose of the renewal, and it kind of talks about what we do, that we provide rides to healthcare and jobs and housing. And we've provided over 1 million rides in 2024-25, kind of talks a little bit about our services. So we have, in terms of our brevity, we have 7 words that we have not used. So just keep that in mind. If you want to tweak things, we have 7 words. And we might have more if you want to take away some words or add some words. But ultimately, we have about 168 words at this point. So that's the summary. And again, what we're talking about tonight is the adoption of, and these all go in a form called an SEL 803. And so it asks for these 3 specific things: the caption, the question, and the summary. In addition, this is required language and it doesn't count against our words, but it's basically identifying what kind of revenue or what those revenue amounts would be during those years that the special levy would be in action, that we would be covered. And our finance manager put these numbers together. They're estimates, but I think they're pretty good estimates that we have to provide. And that's actually part of the summary. But again, it's not counted in the 175 words. So staff is recommending that after you have the public hearing and you close the public hearing, staff is recommending that you adopt the resolution that you have before you, which is 2504. It has an exhibit. The exhibit is the caption, the question, and the summary. And it also has the levy amount. So really the keys are the language for the caption, the question, and the summary, and the fact that you're recommending to move forward with the levy amount of 13 cents per thousand. And I think that's the end. That's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions?
Go ahead. Oh,
I had one question on the summary, where it says RVTD provided over 1 million rides in 2024 to 2025 period. Is that like a 2-year number? Because that's the way it reads to me.
Paige, our auspicious planning manager, is on tonight as well. And she was really instrumental in drafting this language. So Paige, would you mind answering that question?
Yeah, absolutely. So this number is for the fiscal year 2024-2025, which would be July 1st, 2024 through June 30, 2025. It's a typical way that our government fiscal years run. The million rides was done before we had our service reduction in September. As you probably know, we don't have a million rides that we're tracking right now that we're going to be doing for the current fiscal year. We also don't know what the 25-26 fiscal year ridership is going to be because we haven't finished our fiscal year. But basically, yeah, we could put an FY if you like, in front of that to make it more specific.
Yeah, I think it would be good to make sure it's clear that it's a 1-year number. Because I think the general population isn't used to seeing those kind of 2-year 24, 25 numbers. I work in the government, so I had a feeling it might be the fiscal year, but I think it could be confusing to people.
Okay, we can,
we have enough words to actually put
we do.
here.
We do. Even though I think you're right, I think lots of people don't understand the word fiscal year as opposed to a calendar year, something like that.
That's 2 or 3 more words though, too, right? There's 3 more words, right?
I think we have enough words
Yeah.
for that, right? Yeah. Oh, we have 7 words, so
There's 7 words.
we have to be careful.
We do. Although I will say, Paige, why don't you think about what we could do there?
Yeah, I just want to make sure too that everyone's microphone is on, because I think and Katrina's also nodding. There might have been a comment we didn't hear.
I think it was Dan. His comment was he agreed.
Thank you.
You just said you agreed. He agreed.
Quick question. On this word count business, like if we wanted to do fiscal year 24 or 25, are we allowed to do those kinds of abbreviations to sort of stay within our words, like FY 24-25? Would that be beneficial?
Yeah, so the character number is different than the word count. So this is literally words. And so if we put FY, the capitalization FY, that would be considered one word.
Okay, and so we're we're adding one, which leaves us with only 6. I
So
will avoid phrasing anymore.
Good.
If you're going to say FY, I think that runs into the same problem. A lot of people would say, what the heck's an FY?
If you want to be really clear, you could just say July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025.
If we can get that in,
There's enough words for that too.
we could do that.
If we put fiscal year, that gets us up to 90 words. RVTD provided over 1 million rides in fiscal year 2024-2025.
Could we, and the reason I'm saying this is because Julie's actually going to talk about something that's happening at the state with the transportation bill. And because of that, we were hoping to save some words that we wanted to talk to you about. Would it be possible to give an idea of how many rides we did in 2024? And when people think 2024, they're thinking a calendar year. That's what I would think. Paige, could we do that?
I would probably recommend 2025.
25,
Okay.
newest.
Yeah,
newest.
because, yeah, the largest portion of our ridership did actually happen in 2025 because we did have service all the way through almost, past July. It was through August. So I would say 2025.
So would the board be amenable to just having the 2025 number? If we have words left, we can certainly put in the months, because I think I think I'd rather put in the months than than just fiscal year, those 2 words, because I think people don't know what that is. But people mostly think of calendar years because that's how we kind of mostly live. We don't live by government finance.
Another possibility is to put in the last fiscal year.
If we have other words we might be adding due to other news, then I'm okay waiting for a final decision on this until we know what else we might need to add to this, so we know the exact word count that we're playing with.
So I can give you an update if you'd like. Right now, if you're tracking the news in the state of Oregon, what is going on, it looks like that the special session, they were going to vote to move the referendum to May instead of November. And which caused me a little bit of heartburn, but I don't have the political pull to be able to voice my opinion on how I feel. But the idea is that it would be taken up in May, which means it would be on the ballot with us, which causes a little bit of a problem because it's a state issue versus a local issue. And so the question was, do we put in there, this is not the transportation tax or the payroll tax. This is not the payroll tax, or something to that effect that talks about that. Now, another way you can address it is if somebody writes and pays for an opinion piece on the ballot, which we could do it there too. And so we have a little bit of leeway, but originally when I was told this last Wednesday evening, I was a little bit shocked. And the first thing that entered my mind was, now what are we going to do? So when we came back and I talked to the staff about it and we were working on this the next day, it's like, what can we tweak? What can we do here? And we only have 6 words.
We have 7 unless we add at least 1, right? Right. Is that the math? The math was 7 or no?
Well, if we put FY,
Yeah.
then now we're 6.
So one of the things you can do, and we discussed this, is we're actually going to know in fairly short order whether this is actually going to go on in May or it's going to go on in November. If the board wanted to, you could, with very little tweaking, and we could have some language that might go into the explanatory statement, you could adopt it on the 25th of February. Because it has to be turned in on the 27th of February. So, and it would just be that one little blip, right? It would just be the difference between leaving it just as it is or adding some language that, you know, said something like, this measure is only related to the local funding or something like that. And we could use those 7 words for that. But you could do that as well.
I would prefer us adopting something and then amending in February as opposed to leaving it to chance that we don't have a quorum or something like February. How's that?
That's a great idea. So what staff would still recommend is you adopt what we've put forward. It sort of meets what you had asked for in terms of what the law requires and what we're held to. And then if something changes, you're right, Chair, we can just bring something back to amend it.
My only concern
Also,
there
if I
is,
can interrupt really quick.
Hold on just a second, Paige.
Okay.
You have a board member.
my only concern there is that that's a 2-day turnaround, and I worry about what happens if we don't get a quorum for that. Would we want to basically approve 2 versions of this document? One for if the bill is going to be voted on in May, and the other if no, it's going to stay in November.
If you didn't have a quorum and you couldn't change it, I think we still have the ability to counteract it. So I'm not
Okay.
really that concerned.
Great.
I think you're better off actually just adopting this and we move forward and then we'll be back in February again to talk about the other piece that has to be adopted in March. So I think if you adopt this, we're fine here. I think that there's ways to counter this that might be better actually.
Gives you guys time to craft something as opposed to doing it now.
I have one more related question. Let's see here. Of course, I just forgot it. That's how that goes. All right, anybody else can take it.
Paige, did you?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Paige. Tyler.
Yeah, the resolution, and this is all in Exhibit 2, the resolution. And the resolution in Article 6 says that you're authorizing the general manager to act on behalf of the district and to take such further action as is necessary to carry out the intent and purposes herein in compliance with the applicable provisions of law. So it feels like that allows Julie the latitude to be able to make those modifications without us having to come back to the board for an amendment in February.
Yes, several of us are killed by a bus or something like that.
Not
Do you have to use the bus?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Then I feel pretty safe
the bus?
because that's one of the safest modes of transportation. So we're good. Okay.
We have very professional drivers.
Okay.
That's not gonna.
That's good for me, knowing you know, it gives you the authority anyway. And so if we want to talk about it in February, what you've crafted, we can actually amend if we want to, or just say yes to your discretion. Does that sound good?
It does. I do have my belated question,
Okay.
though, finally. So let's say the referendum vote is moved to the May ballot. Do we know the order that it would appear on the ballots, whether our levy would be above it or below it? Because that's kind of important.
Don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
There is one silver lining. We won't have to pay so much for the ballot because they'll have to share the cost.
Okay. No further questions from me. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think we'll.
We could probably figure that out though, because I think there is in the voters pamphlet, it's the same every time. Like, so it would be, you could probably find one that had a state measure.
And here's where I'm
see
going
where
with
that
it.
landed. That would be interesting.
Yeah, because
I'll do a little bit of
yeah,
research.
because if we know for certain,
Usually it's it's like federal stuff, then state stuff, and then local stuff
Yes.
is lower down.
They're separate.
Yeah.
Okay, if we know, or if history indicates that all the state stuff is going to be seen before ours, both in the voters pamphlet as well as on the ballot itself, then I'm not as worried about including this is not the referendum transportation bill. I'm not worried about including that in our summary if voters are going to see that and vote on it first. If ours is up first, they're definitely going to think it's the transportation bill, and I would want to include something in the summary.
I'll look into that.
I think we should also have comments, at least one comment that says, this is not the state transportation bill, clarifying that.
We can also, we have an opportunity in the explanatory statement, which is not done yet, but that you will get relatively soon. We also, I think, have some words in the explanatory statement that we haven't used all the words, or we could tweak some of the words to have something there as well. And by the time that comes to you, we'll know.
Go ahead.
Paige, back to the 1 million rides. Do you know if do you have the ridership numbers to tell if we had over 1 million rides in 2025? Because there is something nice about that 1 million number.
We did not have 1 million rides.
Okay.
If we just look at the calendar year, January through December, it would have fallen short of that. By how much, I don't know, but it wouldn't be enough for us to state 1 million.
Then
It's not-
I do like using the most recent fiscal year and just, I don't need to wordsmith it necessarily, but using that and making it clear that it's a 1-year number would be my opinion there.
Well, and if you look at government in general, you adopt budgets over a fiscal year. We report ridership over a fiscal year. Everything we do over a fiscal year. People may not understand it, and it doesn't. So I think we should probably just stick with what we always have done and do it that way. And you're going to have a clear number. The number isn't going to be off too much. I think I went back and calculated, and it wasn't bad, but it was under 1 million.
Yeah.
We could also say RVTD provided over 1 million rides in the previous year.
That's
And
not
if it's
bad.
asked what year is that, we could say that would be our fiscal year.
How many words do we lose? Do you count 2024 and 2025 as two?
Yes, year. I think it's
Because they're okay,
Equal.
it's two.
Let me see.
The previous year. So you're just adding one.
number.
Yeah, well, you're just adding one, right?
Taking period out too.
Oh, yeah, you take the period out. Yeah, you're the same.
The word.
We're
I'm
at
not sure that
one-
counts.
We're at 171. 171, and then if we add, this is not the state referendum transportation bill. I like that language that was proposed. We're at 179, so we're over.
Letters. 4 words over. Sounds like.
I guess my opinion on the statement about the state transportation bill is, I would hope it's pretty clear to people. I mean, we're saying RVTD's imposing this tax. It should, I would hope people know enough that the state and RVTD are 2 different entities, but
All they see is tax.
yes.
They don't see anything beyond that word.
And I guess to that too, do we have a schedule of like if board members wanted to submit letters in support of this measure, is there a certain schedule we have to get those in to get them into the?
There is.
Yeah, yeah, it goes.
We have more time, right?
Well, but it's still close to the actual March filing date. It's like a week or 10 days after that. But
Okay.
I think the Political Action Committee is anticipating, gathering at least 5 and potentially paying for them. But so the Political Action Committee will keep you apprised as to your opportunities, what it will cost and what the deadlines are. I'm not sure if the district can actually buy one.
I don't think the district can, but
We just get the explanation.
personal people
Yeah.
can,
Oh, yeah.
like myself.
Yeah, the endorsements are due on March 19th.
I think we could use endorsements to help clarify that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
All right, so are we needing staff to resolve this fiscal year thing tonight, or do we leave it to their discretion? Folks, how are we feeling about it? They know what the directive is, but is that
I'm fine with
satisfactory?
staff's
Okay.
discretion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Sounds good.
All right, so do I have a motion to
Do you
adopt?
need to close the hearing?
Oops, sorry. Yes, I need to ask if anybody wants to testify. Duh. Is there anybody in the audience, online or here, that would like to make some comments about the resolution 2504? Okay, looks like, although we have somebody online, they're not stepping up to testify, so close the hearing. And now, any further deliberations? And may we have a motion to adopt? Who would like to do that?
I'll
Go
move
ahead.
approval of resolution number 25-04.
Seconded.
All right. Roll call, please.
Well, can't we
Oops.
have some comments?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I asked for deliberation.
Discussion?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I asked for it before the motion too.
Yeah.
but Go ahead.
I know, I'm just confused tonight.
I'm sorry.
Me too.
You could keep me on my toes. Go ahead.
So I'm not 100% clear what we're going to be voting on, just the resolution, but that doesn't clarify for me that what the title of the measure will be when it's on the ballot.
So if we go back, right there, it's, the caption will be renewal of 5-year local option tax for general operations. So it's this caption right here. And then if you go to the next, the question is, shall the district continue imposing the 13 cents per thousand assessed value for 5 years beginning July 1st, 2026 to general operations? And then the last piece of that is the summary that we just talked about. So that's those 3 pieces of what you're voting on through this resolution.
It's referenced as Exhibit 1 in the resolution itself. So it's essentially directing that, but then also paragraph 6 also gives additional discretion to staff to take whatever actions
Mhm.
they may need.
Yeah,
That
that's
makes
good.
sense.
That's good. I just think it's really important that the ballot title says what it just said, because I didn't see that on my agenda. And a lot of people are not very careful voters, I should put it that way. And they may read real quickly the title and vote no, especially if it talks about taxes, as Julie mentioned, because that's a very sensitive issue for everybody. And I think reading it this time again, I think it's pretty clear that it's a continuation. It's not a new tax, which is the key issue. Okay. That, I'm happy.
Any other comments, deliberations, thoughts? Okay. Lou, if you don't mind doing a roll call.
Denise Kraus,
Yes.
Bill Mansfield,
Yes.
Tanya Morrow, Tyler Jasper,
Yes.
Katrina Ernman Newton,
Yes.
Dan Davis,
Yes.
and Carl McNair.
Yes.
7 yes votes, motion passed.
Thank you all for hard work there. Guess we'll keep our fingers crossed. And we'll know soon. Okay, agenda item 5B, appointments to the STIF Advisory Committee. STIFAC. Anybody presenting on that or?
I believe Paige is going to present. Adam is out.
Yes, Madam Chair, I will do that. Can we stop the screen share from the previous presentation? Perfect, thank you. So hello, good evening. My name is Paige West. I'm the Planning and Strategic Programs Manager. We're looking at an appointment to our STIF Advisory Committee. Adam Gomez is typically the person that is coordinating that committee, and he handled the solicitation, but unfortunately he's not feeling well. So I'm going to be handling this for him tonight. You did have a memo from Adam in your board packet that described the process and the open positions. We have some renewals that we're doing this evening, and then we had one open position that we are recommending a member who previously was on our STIF Advisory Committee and who is actually on our Accessible Transportation Work Group. You probably have come across his name or worked with him in the community. His name is George Adams, and he's been a wonderful asset and advisor to RVTD over the years. So the way that the STIFAC is comprised is they have 2-year terms. They're allowed to serve for 2 consecutive terms, but then they have to take a break in between. George was one of those. He actually was on our group for 4 years, and then he had to take a break for 2, and he's wanting to resume his service to RVTD on the STIFAC again. And then we have other positions that are currently filled, and we have members who are wanting to renew for their second term, at which point after that second term, they will also need to step off for hopefully only a brief amount of time, and then they will also be considered to come back. The STIFAC is also required by state rule to have certain positions that represent groups within our community, low income, persons with disabilities, a transit user or an advocate of transit users. And so we have to make sure that at least a portion of our 7-member STIFAC represents each of those groups. And so George, who is a person living with a disability, will be able to provide one of the advocacy groups, which is one that we are currently lacking. So we're really glad that he's wanting to serve on STIFAC again. So before you tonight is essentially a recommendation to reappoint our existing members, Kara Carter, Jennifer Christofferson, and Natalie Metler, and then to have a new appointment with George Adams to our STIF Advisory Committee.
Any questions?
So is it time to make a motion?
I think so. Go ahead.
I move approval of those that are recommended.
Right. New member and reappointment of 3. Any discussion? Go ahead.
I just want to say that I find it very, good. I can't think of a better word than good, that we have 4 people who have served on this committee before that want to serve on it again. I think that's awesome and probably says a lot about how RVTD staff is running the committee. So anyway, good work. I also know George Adams. He advocates for people with disabilities to the city as well, and is a great advocate. Very nice guy. So anyway, I'll be voting yes.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, anybody else? Thank you for making those comments. All right, let's go ahead and another roll call vote.
Denise Kraus,
Yes.
Bill Mansfield,
Yes.
Tanya Morrow, Tyler Jasper,
Yes.
Katrina Ernman Newton,
Yes.
Dan Davis, and Carl McNair.
Yes.
7 yes votes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
All right. General Manager's report.
I have a lot to report tonight, but I'll I'll start with this calendar that was given to each one of the board members. And Katrina, we will make sure that it is emailed to you. And on there is dates of when each jurisdiction is meeting, either in their council meetings or in their board meetings. Because there's a few boards too, that the RCC, the Road Community College Board, there's also the SOU Board of Trustees, and others. And the reason we gave you this list of meetings is that um, Kelly and I will be attending these meetings to give them an update of RVTD, what's happening, where we are today, and then also to talk about having a ballot measure on the levy. And we would like a board member to attend with us if possible. And I know that it's hard to ask a board chair or the vice chair to attend every single one of these. And so we are really, really open to having other board members attend with us and give you the opportunity to speak to that jurisdiction about what's going on with RVTD. So we place these calendars out there of February, March, and I think there's April too, of different council meetings. And Kelly was going to actually contact the staff to get us on the agenda. So.
Is it every meeting you guys are attending? Okay, thanks.
Not,
Okay. Oh, yeah, okay.
yes. We may not, we're not going to go to the city of Medford more than once. Yeah. It's just that these are the available dates to us. And so I'm not sure how we want to exactly approach this to contact us or how we do this. I don't know if board members want to take a look at that and just shoot us back an email or give us a phone call and say, hey, I'm available at these days and times, and we can kind of just figure it out. Is that the easiest way?
I mean,
Or we could send out a doodle
for each of the meetings or something.
to it, and maybe we'll do that. We'll send out a doodle and say who's available, and then we'll try to figure it that way. And for Bill, since you don't have an email, we'll just call you and say, hey, how would you like to go?
That way you guys can sort of narrow the menu down. For,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a little bit,
Your calendar.
right. Session is about to kick off, and it's a short session, and there is going to be a lot this year at the legislative level because they're trying to figure out what to do now. So we have the referendum, the whole question. There is a legislative concept that is floating around right now, which is to put together a task force. And the governor has requested this, that just talks about transit funding, options for transit funding, what is the real need of transit funding in the state of Oregon. And it's made up of transit members and others, advisory groups or different groups, all put together. I think there's 21 members. And so I've been asked to look at the list and see if I recommend anything from the commission side to add to it. But in there, RVTD, what I have said is RVTD needs to be have a seat at the table, because we've been really the champions behind transportation for transit since the beginning, and we need to continue our voice at the table to make sure that whatever is decided upon, that it's going to help us get where we need to be, and was assured that we would be at the table. So with that said, that will be voted on. It's going to be, I believe, a House bill. It's going to come out of the Transportation House Committee, is where, not the joint, but just, or maybe is it the joint? It's the joint transportation.
So it'll have funding, and ODOT will be the coordinator and staff for this? No?
No,
It'll be-
it's going to be legislative staff, yeah. So it'll come straight from the legislators.
Good.
In fact, I think ODOT may have a place at the table, but they may not. So right now, things are a little difficult with ODOT, so we're not sure what's going to happen there. But I'm sure there'll be a staff there to actually advise from the public transit realm. And then the Oregon Transit Association, again, is working on these different aspects of it and really trying to put together the talking pieces. There is not going to be any transportation funding decision in the short session. It's going to be the long, and what they're doing is trying to set the table. So OT is kind of helping with that whole piece on this legislative concept to make sure that it's well-rounded, that rural and urban and small urban and city and county and everybody that has, transit under their purview is represented in tribes at the table. So that's going to be important. I think the one thing that's been really difficult for legislators is understanding how transit is funded throughout the state. And one of the things that they always hold up is RVTD is well-rounded in our funding resources. So we have our local tax law levy, operating levy. We also have our property tax levy. So we are like 1/3 of our funding. It's a little bit more than 1/3. We have our state funding, which comes through the payroll tax, and then we have the federal funding. So we are really well-rounded and represent a lot of different funding sources, and they want to see that happen in a transit agency. The problem is not everybody is a special district like ourselves. They're not a transportation district. They may be a special district through county, a city, or some other entity like a council of governments. And it makes it very, very difficult because they may be relying on general fund from a city or a county, et cetera. And so it makes it really difficult. I think that's the frustration with legislators, honestly, and why they feel like transit is kind of a problem in some ways, because when they're trying to find a funding source for them, it's difficult because you're having to look at how you match that, what you do, who's going to get this money, how does it impact this, and it can become very complicated in a really, really short period of time. So I'm hoping that this task force can really drill down and maybe even make some suggestions to legislators on how to change the way transit is in the state of Oregon. And I've heard complaints sometimes that you've got appointed officials at the TriMet level and the LTD level and the Salem level, versus we have elected officials at our transportation districts or our counties and cities. And so it'll be interesting what this task force does. I don't know how many times they're going to meet. It scares me a little bit, because what they're asking them to do in a year is going to be a lot. And so and you have 21 people that you're trying to corral into attending meetings and having quorums. It's a heavy lift. So I hope that everybody that raises their hand and commits to it is truly committed to attending all those meetings. And then the last thing I want to report, well, there's one more thing. On the federal level, we're still waiting for reauthorization of the federal dollars. So right now, we did receive our federal funding. We received it right before the layoff. We received part of it. We just recently received the elderly and disabled piece of it. That has come through too, but we were also informed by the federal government, and this is something we've shared with the board, but I wanted to share it out again tonight in my report, is that FTA has downsized considerably in their amount of people working. They have told us that as we apply for our federal funds, that the delay is going to be very similar to what we experienced this year. So our federal funds that we get for operating will probably not come to us until September or October of next year for this year. So we aren't going to see this year's funding that we're in our fiscal year right now until September or October of next year, which means we really need to be paying attention to our cash flow, making sure we can make payroll. There's been rumors that have kind of floated around that I have heard that RVTD is considering another cut of service. We are not. We've shared that with the board. You're all aware that the way our cash flow is set up right now is where we are. We can maintain what we've got with careful fiscal constraint, and that's what we're doing. So it's good. And then the last thing I wanted to report out was, if you are following the news, the transit world, down in Red Bluff, our paratransit provider, Paratransit Services, actually provides bus service down in the Red Bluff area. There was a serious accident where somebody crossed the center line and hit the transit bus head on. It instantly killed the driver, and there were 4 passengers on the bus that perished in the fire. One person was able to escape, but the FTA came in immediately, along with the California CHP and others, and looked at the response of the transit agency, found no fault in the transit agency. The total fault of the accident was on the other driver. But it's one of the things that is really, really important, and something that we strive for is really always looking at making sure that our drivers, in this instant, the driver couldn't respond because they were killed instantly. But being able to respond to accidents like this and being able to evacuate a bus, et cetera. And we put a lot of time and money into training, and a lot of time and money into safety equipment, et cetera. And so this is really unfortunate because it's really unheard of that usually transit buses have this kind of a fatality, but it did happen. I wanted to make you aware of it in case somebody asked you about it. Happened last week. They're pretty devastated, but they're getting through it. And so we're giving them space right now, not asking a lot of questions. But one of the things that they reached out to me was that they would like to come after this and have a conversation with our drivers at our annual employee meeting and talk to them about driver safety, et cetera. But all of us at RVTD want to send our condolences to Paratransit Services, to their families, and to the families of the passengers, and that we're thinking of them during this difficult time. So that's one of my reports.
Go ahead, Dan.
Should we consider a resolution of the board giving condolences to the victims?
We could, and we could draft something up and send it and have it at the next board meeting, if you'd like.
So how do you do training for something like that? Because first, if the driver was killed, there wasn't anything he could do. So first responders are the ones that need to understand.
And the unfortunate part too, it was in a rural area. And so the response, it was quick, but it's still out in a rural area for them to respond. And of course, the traffic people tried to respond to. In the past, the way so there have been other serious injuries. We had one ourselves. If you remember a few years ago, we had a driver on I-5 have a heart attack, cross over the barrier, the median barrier, came across. Our bus saw it coming. The paratransit vehicle did, tried to get away from it, but was still hit head on. We did have a passenger in a wheelchair. The driver was trapped, but we were able to get the person in the wheelchair off the vehicle. So what we do is we teach how to evacuate. We give them safety cutters to be able to cut straps. We teach them how to deal with a rollover incident. If a wheelchair is you're hanging upside down, how you get that person out of that. All of that kind of training comes through our Smith training and also our CTAA certified training. That is a national training. They teach them, they show them videos. They've actually taken buses and rolled them over and lit them on fire. To show how quickly they are consumed and how to deal with all those things. So we try to give them the tools, but it's unfortunate. It's like a vehicle accident or anything. We're only as good in the moment as to what we can do physically to save somebody's life. And it's just, thank goodness, we do have buses that are out on like Highway 62, out on I-5. Well, it used to be I-5, but not so much anymore, but 99, where there are larger speed, higher speed limits. But most of ours are pretty low impact because of the speed limits being low here in town, which is good. But we always have to be safe, try to be as safe as possible. I don't know. It's hard, Dan. It really is. And when something tragic like this happens. But we also, and you brought that up about first responders, we also have worked with first responders they've used our buses for evacuations and different trainings themselves, the city of Medford, the police department, the sheriff's department, the fire departments, and we've taught them how to turn our batteries off on our fuel systems and do those things in case of these emergencies, so.
And they know where to find the cutters to release straps.
Yes. So, and again, it's just really, really tragic for everyone involved. Didn't mean to bring a downer report, but I wanted to make you aware of it because it's just our reality.
I have two thoughts or comments. One of them is a question. So you mentioned that it gets really bogged down in complexity due to the different structural
On the transit
organizations of. Do you feel like what came out of the 2017 bill though has worked with the STIF where people have to, the jurisdictions just have to apply as if it's a grant? I mean, that seems to.
So the way the STIF dollars are sent out, it has been a little bit complicated in a couple places. And I'll give you an example. Clackamas County, Multnomah County, and Washington County are all under TriMet, and they're the qualified entity because they're the largest transit agency. So they receive all their funds. And then all of the county systems underneath that have to apply through TriMet.
Oh.
That has been a little bit wonky for them, and it has been very difficult. Those things have to be worked out, and I don't know how we ever are able to fix any of that, other than really if they could look a little bit better at how it's distributed, there's a possibility there. The second thing is that in a situation where the county, and I'll give you an example, Douglas not Douglas, that's not a good example, Coos Bay. Coos Bay gets the funds, they pass them off to the to a nonprofit entity, and then they actually became a special district, but they're not a transit district. I mean, so it gets really weird. The only way that they're ever going to fix the structure is if they made everybody become a transportation district or a mass transit district. You had to be one or the other, and you don't necessarily have to implement property taxes because some places don't. They just become a district and they have a governing body and they use, they use the STIF dollars and then the county dollars. I don't know, it's
Seems like a big nut to crack for that committee, for sure.
and I'm hoping that I retire before that happens.
I don't blame you. One other quick thing. Looks like we might have another report from staff today. Is that right? Yeah?
Yes, I realize that. The other, there was, but was there something else?
Well, yeah. I just wanted to, I don't know, just throw this out, get some feedback maybe. But you mentioned the rumor about us making additional cuts. And as much as it was really difficult for us to watch all the cuts that we did, as much as it was heartbreaking to know what was going on with the staff that we had to lay off, I do see some benefit to how you guys handled this in the sense of getting it all done based on the hard work of all the staff and particularly the financial aspect of it, and just figuring out what our cash budget was going to be able to sustain us. So we're not going back and forth with the public about what we can do and what we can't do. So I just want to throw that out. I don't want to diminish the hardships of the staff that was let off, but I do think that it's good that we got it done and now we can cruise for the 3 or 4 years and not have to worry about disrupting the public again as much as, yeah. Okay, so that's my thought. comment.
And I appreciate that. And I think that one of the things, it was very difficult and still very difficult. We're still working through it. There's still always those things where, you know, there's another run at sanctuary states again and federal funding, and we'll see where it lands. I mean, the lawsuit was won. So that's why our federal funds were finally released. But now there's this whole conversation again about funding for sanctuary states. I think the other piece of it is that there is still, too, the other thing that we have to. So one of the things that the staff would like to do is come back at the next meeting and give you an update of what we've done, because there's things that we're considering now. It's like, how do we liquidate some of these buses? Are we going to lease them out to other agencies that if we're not going to put service back, you know, we have a building, can we consolidate our buildings and actually lease out one of our buildings, which we're considering. So we're working on these different plans too, to bring back to the board to make sure that the future is still there, because I don't want to lose sight of what we built, what we were promised, and what we may be able to sustain in the future. Because 2017, when we worked on that bill, and I spent a lot of time on that bill, was you build this big empire, and then in the future, we'll come back and we'll have a transportation bill and we'll sustain it. Well, they didn't do that. You know, it didn't happen at the end of June. If we had gotten the 0.4%, which they were proposing, then it went down to 0.3%, then it went down to 0.2, and then it went down to 0.1%, the last day of the special session, and then they put a sunset of 2 years on it. So there was all this politics that were happening that were out of control, which we really thought that we were going to be able to bring employees back. We got the state funding, we were going to bring them back, and we were be able to sustain ourselves. That's not our reality anymore. Will it be the reality in the future? I hope so. I think the state of Oregon really has to take a hard look at all of this, from ODOT all the way out, how we're going to sustain. If you followed the commission this last week, we found out a bridge that we were told that was going to cost $6 billion is now going to be close to $16 billion. And we're asked, how are you going to fund it? That's a good question. How are we going to fund transit? And so we have to be really smart about this. But I think we will get back. And so whatever decisions this board makes in the future, and the staff recommends, we need to keep in mind that we don't want to cut ourselves down, our facilities, our capital, as far as our buses and et cetera. We can't stop doing what we do. We can't stop planning for it, because when the money does come, then we'll have to do what we did in 17, was rush to try to find the vehicles to do it, rush to trying to find the facilities to do it, all those things, and have this big stand up again. So we're trying to figure out the best way to maintain all of those vehicles, keep the newest vehicles in as possible, lease out the ones that have low enough mileage that we can pull them back and use them in the future, and make sure whoever we lease them to will take care of them and treat them the same way we would. So we're looking at all those things. We're working right now with Chariots and with LTD because they actually are in need of buses. We're looking at some other people here in our community that may be able to use a building and lease it from us for a short period of time. So those are the things that we're looking at. And then the last thing I didn't bring up was, and I know that in the MPO report, Tanya's going to talk a little bit about this just briefly, but the city of Medford has asked us to give them a letter of support for their build grant, for the NEPA process, for the South Stage interchange or South Stage overcrossing. I probably didn't say that right. I did? Oh, hey, I'm better than I thought I was. Extension project. And in the past, you know, the city of Medford has given us letters of support. RVTD has written them. Sometimes the board writes them. Sometimes the general manager or the city manager will write one in support of something when we're applying for these federal grants. And I know it came up at the MPO meeting. We weren't given a lot of what do I want? Notice. Thank you. I'm trying to be nice about it. Carl, you didn't give us a lot of notice, City of Medford. And Carl's not going to talk about this because he's going to abstain from any of this conversation because it impacts the City of Medford. But what I'd like to do is give me permission to look at it carefully, draft up a letter, and send it not on from the board, but actually from the general manager supporting the project. The project in general, if we grew out our system the way we think it would help us having either an overpass or an exchange there. Either one is going to help our bus system because there's supposed to be a huge employment campus built out over there along with other things and a lot of businesses. And it's in our long range plan. But what they were asking at the MPO was for the MPO to vote on. And Tanya couldn't do that on behalf of the board because she hadn't talked to you about it.
Well, I hadn't talked to staff. I didn't have enough time to talk to staff. I might have done it if I talked to you, but I can also, I don't know if this is the right time, but I can also tell you that there is nothing in here at all in this letter about that would, assuage any concern I have about whether it fits within what we want to do, right? Because the focus was that it's needed for resiliency to force traffic, because local traffic is forced on I-5 because there's not enough intermediate east-west crossings, and it's degrading freight reliability, it's increasing congestion, and it's causing car crash risks at the interchanges. So those kinds of things just weren't necessarily in our wheelhouse. So that was, so I felt I needed to talk to staff before voting on it. So all I did was abstain. So I don't know if they got miffed at that or whether they always intended to ask RVTD for its own separate letter, but yeah.
Well, they've always asked us for a separate letter. So they ask all the jurisdictions for a separate letter. They ask the MPO, even sometimes Tradco, they'll ask Tradco for a letter of support along with the act sometimes, I think. Maybe not. Maybe not the act because they don't meet often enough. So I don't know what the board would like me to do.
Yeah.
If they want to just let me do what I always do, which is draft a letter and
That's
from
my
RVT.
goal. You guys just,
My vote, too.
yep. Any concerns about that? All right, and Carl is not shaking his head one way or the other.
Carl, don't even look at me, Carl.
Don't even look at him.
Don't look at me. Thank you. No. All right.
Okay.
And that was the end of my report.
Okay. Any comments from the board? Questions from the board?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
You mentioned some sensitivity or something between transit and ODOT. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sensitivity. So the thing about a big transportation bill is it's complicated because it has a lot of things shoved into it. The referendum pulled out the trucking piece. There's still the road user charge piece that it was pulled out also. But the two things that were left have to do with ODOT and transit. And so one of the things the transit agency is, we're trying to kind of separate us a little bit away from the accountability piece that ODOT is under as far as scrutiny, because the STIF dollars have been spent and have been reviewed, and they have done a really good job spending the dollars the way they were intended, making sure that we were in compliance. There were a couple little hiccups in the beginning with some of the small rural areas. They got it straightened out. So we're the Oregon Transit Association is trying to kind of distance ourselves from the whole conversation about accountability. As far as the ODOT staff and who's representing, they're also trying to, I think the Transportation Committee is trying to keep the ODOT director or the ODOT leadership from being the place at the table and having it be a staff member that can report out on factual staff questions versus policy. But yet it's a policy kind of think tank task force. So I don't know how they're going to do it. So they're just trying to figure that out. The other thing is we only have an interim director right now. We don't have a director at ODOT. And as far as the commission, of course, I'm not going to sit on there as a commissioner because it's a conflict of interest. So I'm going to come in as the general manager and not as a commissioner.
Yeah, just your explanation there made me dizzy about thinking about all the hats that you are wearing when one hat you're distancing yourself from another hat that you wear.
It can be confusing at times, but it works because we're hypersensitive to it. And so I know the commission, we had this come up the other day. We had to vote on the STIP, S-T-I-P. And in there was some, or maybe it was a consent calendar. Anyway, somewhere there was something that had to do with transit, but it was, oh, I know, it was on STIF, excuse me, it was on STIF on a rule change, but it really didn't have to do anything with money. So there wasn't a conflict, and so Commissioner Chang and I were both allowed to vote on it. The thing is we're down to 4 commissioners right now, so if Commissioner Chang and I can't vote, then ODOT Commission can't vote on it. Anything to do with transit. So now we have to be really, really careful. We're going to have to start pulling out. If RVTD has a project, we're going to pull it out separately from Ben's project and let them go in be voted on in one block and mine in another block. And then I'll recuse myself from any conversation or vote. It's a little bit difficult.
Any other thoughts or questions, comments about the general manager's report? Okay. Do we have anybody from the public? If there's somebody still on or wants to speak?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. RV COG, reports from the board. Bill, what happened to RV COG?
Yes, the principal speaker today was a man who is a contractor for building houses. And we've seen lots of different ways that this is done. This is done through a nonprofit corporation. So it was an interesting discussion. And that's about what I have to report.
Okay. MPO, we really, there was a discussion about the formulation for the dues, which doesn't affect us. And then there was this that was brought up, the day before, which was the Medford South Stage Extension Project, letter of support. And other than that, there was a typical amendment to the tip, and that was it. That's my report. Do we have anything from Treadco?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello. I was there, Denise was there, so if I missed something you think should be mentioned, Denise, please do.
Okay.
There was the general discussion around what our friends at ODOT are working on and how it is challenging due to there being an interim director, there being an anticipated deficit. There was some maintenance hiring by the governor that was mentioned, but they're still not quite where they would like to be. There was also discussion on a bridge project and how the funding for that could be redivided in ways that were pretty much universally disliked by all representatives at Tradco at the time. There was mention of the Foothill project, which is almost done, and the BIS-X is how I abbreviated this in my notes. That probably refers to something in a little more detail. That project of corrective work is also going fairly smoothly. The runway driver project, adding highlighters and making some improvements between Glen Road to Coleman, is also going well, along with the present work on Foothill is expected to be done by fall of this year. There wasn't a report from the Transportation Committee or the Transportation Commission at that particular meeting. and City of Medford was there, and has had some bids for some of their upcoming projects. They've got an application for a planning grant, but who knows? And that was what I wrote down.
Thanks. Did you want to add anything, Denise? Anybody else that was there? Anybody else there? Was you there?
I was not there and I wasn't at the RV Act meeting either. I had the flu. So I apologize, but just didn't happen.
I got the flu the following week and a half ago or later, so I know how it is.
Sorry, Katrina, and thank you for the report.
It's all right. I am recovered. I just I'm not gonna risk sharing it with y'all, so
Yeah, thank you.
I'm zooming in.
All right, RV Act.
Yeah, so I attended RV Act and then went from there to Tradco, basically. So, it was mainly the objective was to look at the whole list of projects. There's a list, quite an extensive list of projects that are expensive and obviously not enough money to fund them. So they've got a nice spreadsheet where they can, look at what's got the most impact, what's the safety issues, what's the cost, what objective does that meet, and all of that. So there's a lot of different ways to look at the information, and it's going to be a little challenging. I mean, we tried to start going around to kind of get just a brief description of them, and that was just going to be pretty involved. So ultimately, the group decided to create a subcommittee to go through those and then make some recommendations and come back with some more information. It's a challenge. Definitely going to be a challenge.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, we will be adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.